I'm so happy to be here. You guys are so blessed to have Dr. Mark Vieira. Come on, that is like one of the best ministers in the movement. And Reverend Mark Lapine. Really, you're very, very blessed. I know you know that, but someone who's traveled all over the country, it's important for you to hear how wonderful it is to be blessed with such a consciousness. So I'll start with a fun story. A couple years ago, my dog Brick was in the last phase of his life, and he was not doing well. And so I called an animal communicator, woman that I know, on a Monday, very world-renowned, just the best of the best. And I asked her, please, can we do a session? I'd love to really know what Brick is needing and wanting. And she said, all right, she's booked for months out, but she found a spot for me that Friday. So that Friday I called her and we had a fantastic session. I was so grateful to get connected to Brick and learn more of what I could do for him. And then the next day I get the bill via email and it's for $250. A half hour was $150. So it was $100 more and I thought, that's so odd. So I called her back on Monday. I called her assistant answered and I said, why is there an extra $100 charge on this bill? And she told me, after asking the woman, she came back on the phone and said, well, it seems that Brick contacted her twice between Monday and Friday. I'm not kidding. And it was at $50 for each time that he did this. So I told her the next time Brick calls, please don't answer. And I since have developed a side job on Animal Communicators, so feel free to have your dog contact me. Thank you for that fantastic song, my brother. That dude is awesome. It's off the hook. It's off the hook. We're in an amazing time. It's always an amazing time, but there's a powerful shift happening in the world. Actually, the shift of consciousness has occurred. I call it, we're living in the new era. It's a lighter era. It's a place where you cannot bring your suffering. My most recent book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, is specifically focused on that topic because I really got the divine inspiration that suffering is no longer required for us. In fact, it's in our way. I wanted to name the book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, the New Commandment, but my publisher said, who are you to write the New Commandment? To which I replied, the Lord. Right? But he won out. But the focus of the book is really to contrast the new era and the old era in which we were born. We were born in the old era where suffering was required and expected, putting yourself last and letting everyone else go first, even at your personal physical and monetary expense was necessary. Keeping your light dimmed down so you didn't outshine others was the name of the game. And keeping your wants, your desires, keeping all of that under control. Being vulnerable was dangerous in the old era because people could hurt you, they could harm you, they could belittle you for being vulnerable. So the old era is a time of fierce independence. You did that yourself? That's awesome. And the more you could not need people, the better off you were, sort of. Because again, it was just too vulnerable and dangerous. But that era is over. And we live now in the new era where it's the exact opposite. It all becomes flipped over, where vulnerability equals strength, where your ability to receive help, your ability to put your self-care and the honoring and loving of yourself first so that you can help others from the overflow. The new era requires you to want what you want, to love what you love, and to be fully and freely, joyously yourself. Because that is the blessing that we're here to bring to the world. And we know that here. I mean, you guys are on the cutting edge of evolution around these principles and these concepts. But as the world is catching up, you, the leaders, must keep yourself moving forward. You must be deeply interested in how are you still attached to the old ways of suffering, the ways of keeping yourself down and broken. And one of the ways we do that in the old world is to deny our feelings. to not honor fully who we are. You know, the old era said, sweep all that under the carpet. You know, we became domesticated, and some of the feelings, some of the ones were very, very bad. You know, anger, rage. Rage was horrible to experience. And I get it, because old era, anger and rage was used against people. It was used as a weapon. We either turned it on ourselves or we turned it on others. So I understand if those are our only two choices, then sweeping it under the rug is the best choice. But in the new era, there's a third option where you're free to fully to use all of who you are and to let the feelings move through you. Feeling is not suffering. Every feeling that you have. Did anyone see the movie Inside Out yet? Fantastic movie. Go see it. It's all about honoring the fullness of your feelings. That is not suffering. Suffering is not grief. Grief is of God. There are times in our life where we're transitioning, letting go, where grief is so important. It moves us through the tunnel into a new birthing. So that is not suffering. It's actually quite beautiful. One of the favorite things I love to see is a 3 or 2.5-year-old child flail themselves on the ground and have a temper tantrum. It's beautiful. From head to toe, they just fully express the rage and the feelings. There's not like the hair stands up and they just scream and wail. And then it's over and they take a nap or they go play. Right? But they fully experience. But then you sweet people, as you grew up, you became what Don Miguel Ruiz calls domesticated. At some point, we all were told, wait a minute, enough of that. We were told as kids, I don't know if anyone remembers this one, stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about. I wish I could go back in time and say, do you really understand what you're saying here? I'm not doing this for the joy of it here. Just, you know, there's a consciousness. I'm not making any of us wrong. There's a consciousness that no longer exists, but we stand on the bridge. We stand in between the two worlds, driving, going toward the world of joy, saying yes to the new era, leading the way. And yet sometimes something comes in and we get pulled back. Boy, that old era has a gravitational pull, doesn't it? Sometimes I just love still feeling like a victim. And I love taking hostages and telling my story of woe. Sometimes we process it really, again, here, let me give you the definition of suffering. The definition of suffering is any feeling, thought, or belief or experience that is extended beyond its rightful expiration date. If you don't mind me telling you, because I have psychic abilities, some of y'all have been carrying baggage for a long time. You got stories from way back when that still haunt you. It's time to cut those cords. You can't bring those stories forward. Eckhart Tolle said, suffering is necessary until it is not. So there is a time when it serves us. But then we wake up and we realize that's not the game we play. And when we decide to be free of suffering, carrying old stories, unexpressed feelings, not letting ourselves fully be who we're here to be. When we're done with those games, we have to look at what's in our way. There was a man named Adir, and he lived in a village, very, very, very poor village. Everyone in the village was so poor, except Adir and his family had something very special. They had something that no one else had. They had a cow, and this cow would produce some milk. And they could take the milk to market and they could exchange it for things so they could have a little more than other people. Now, I'm not talking about a cow like you see out here in the prairies or in the fields or on television, those big, beautiful, beefy cows. I'm talking a very, very skinny cow. But nonetheless, this cow could give him a little something more. This cow was all they had. They clung to this cow. It was so important to them. It helped them to survive a little more than everybody else. Well, one day, the Baal Shem Tov comes into town. The Baal Shem Tov The Baal Shem Tov means spiritual leader. And he came in with some of his students. And they came into town, and the town was so thrilled that he was there because they were blessed by his presence. And he hung out with the town for a little while, and then they started to leave. And the Baal Shem Tov and his students suddenly showed up at Adir's front door. And he knocked on the door, and Adir answered, and there he stood, and the Baal Shem Tov said, "Me and my students are hungry, and we need a place to stay tonight. Could we stay here and eat?" Well, of course, Adir invited him in, and then he went to the kitchen where his wife was, and they opened the cupboards to see nothing. What are we going to do? We must feed them. And so Adir says, we have to kill the skinny cow. We have to. Don't worry, it gets better. It's uphill from here. The wife has said, no, that's all we have. We can't do that. But Adir decides to do that. And so he does. And now you need to fast forward like on television where they put the baking in the one oven and they pull it. It's done. So suddenly the food appears on the dining room table. And Adir is just inside trembling. And he thinks, well, there's enough here to at least get us through the week. And I'll figure out what to do after that. And the Baal Shem Tov and his students sit down, and the Baal Shem Tov eats and eats and eats until every piece is gone. Just completely gone. And then he stands up and he goes, we're not going to stay here. Thank you so much. And off they go. Well, Adir looks at his wife. She looks at him. And he says, I'm going to go for a walk. And he goes off into the wilderness. He is heartbroken. He's devastated. Really. This is all he had was a skinny cow. And as he's wandering through the woods, he hears a moaning, a crying out, a voice in pain. And so he finds his way to that voice, and he sees a man who has fallen and broken his leg. So he helps the man, and he gets some sticks, and he binds the leg and brings him some water. As they're talking, he learns that this man is named Mordecai. Now, Mordecai is the richest man in all the villages. And Adir says, oh my gosh, to be you, to have all that you have. To which Mordecai says, it's not so great. Most people I know would be happy to leave me dead here so they could get my money. I don't trust anybody. Well, Adir takes care of him and helps him out of the wilderness and takes him to a friend's house in another village. And time moves on. A couple years later, the Baal Shem Tov is coming back through the village with his students. And suddenly this beautiful carriage with these wonderful horses pulls up. And Adir hops out of the carriage. And he goes to Baal Shem Tov. He says, oh, it's so great to see you. And the Baal Shem Tov says, look at you. This beautiful carriage of horses, you're doing so wonderfully. He says, yeah, Mordecai ended up passing away and left me everything. And so Adir goes off in his carriage. And the students look at the Baal Shem Tov and they go, wait a minute. This has been weird ever since 2 years ago. First of all, you don't eat meat. And second of all, you would never stop at someone's home, say you're going to stay there, and then leave. That man was a poor man. You took advantage of him, ate his skinny cow, and then took off. And the Baal Shem Tov says, he wasn't a poor man. He was a rich man. I just needed to get the skinny cow out of the way. So what is your skinny cow? Today, what is in the way of you living fully in the land of joy? What are you clinging to, thinking that this is what you need, this is what you need to survive, and yet that is the very thing that is blocking you. You're so stranglehold. Is that the way? You know what I mean? Stranglehold. Holding on so tightly to so little that we forget that this is what we need to do to move forward. Sometimes it's a relationship, sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's a place where you're living. Sometimes the world of form becomes that which we're clinging to. And to the extent that you cling to anything, to the world of form, you lose the view of possibilities, infinite possibilities around you at all times. This is my only way. And so the universe says, okay, I'd love to show you a few more options, but okay. This is what we do. We shut down the vision and we cling to so little when there's so much more available. It's not just things of this world. It's on the more subtle levels, behaviors, thoughts, beliefs. Believing yourself to not be enough. Believing. These are the things that become our skinny cows. We worship negative thoughts and beliefs. That's what happens to us from growing up in the old era of fear. We cling to them, not even realizing that letting them go is what has to occur. That's what's so fabulous about this spiritual center. That's what's so great about the Science of Mind. It's the teaching of freedom, of getting those skinny cows out of the way. This is the game we're here to play. And it's an important time. You know, we all know what happened in Charleston this week. And there's a rising of love and expansion, and yet at the same time, fear comes up in the world. But it's all for good. It's all for good. And, you know, for me and for all of us, let us take this moment and just say, yes, there is much trauma that continues to repeat itself in the world. That is what is happening. Fear is repeating trauma. And that's all that it does. It recycles trauma. And then I pause and I think, oh, fear in here keeps repeating traumas. I've got the battle of love and fear happening inside of here. Why is it happening out there? Well, because I've got it happening in here, and I don't think I'm the only one in the room. This is the frontier, along with helping the world, of course, but this is the frontier. This is the uncharted territory. And now is the time in the new era where we can do it together, where it's not shameful or embarrassing to fall down. It's not bad to grieve. It's not it's not horrible to have rage flow through your body. Just make it constructive. Make it force something. There's something very holy about having a big plastic bat and beating the crap out of a pillow. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Our culture and New Thought, because it's so happy, has lost the sacredness of the dark night, the necessity of moving through the dark night. It's lost, you know, the 3 days between the crucifixion and the resurrection. The 3 days of we need our wailing walls where we can go to the wall and just wail and get it out and go to create space for new life. It's not for the weak of heart to awaken, to realize your full power of spirit, and then realize, oh, my job is to clear this out, to become an open vessel for more love. And it would have appeared at one time in our culture selfish to be so focused on you. But what we know here and teach here is that is the work to do. One awakened being freeing themselves of the war inside of them becomes a blessing unto the world in ways that you cannot measure. Your willingness to release the suffering ways and to become awakened to the love that you are and to do all the work sometimes that is required to be that love until it becomes a natural expression of being. All of that is for yourself first and foremost, because you are the beloved in whom God is well pleased. Breathe. And it is a true blessing unto the world. So, today, this week, be willing to see where your skinny cows are. Be willing to see if you can let go and go into the wilderness to discover what's there for you. Are you willing? Thank you, 3 of you, for being willing. Us 4 will do it for everyone. All right, let's move into prayer. I want our practitioners to come forward, please. I need you. I love practitioners so much. Please come forward and stand here. These are your practitioners. They have worked hard. They've given time in prayer and study to be able to serve you so beautifully. So I stand on their shoulders. And I tell you, come up and use these people. Get prayer. Stop hiding. There's anything. This is the new era. Tell them, this is what's happening. And they will know the truth for you and help set you free. So let's turn within. Take a deep breath. And I speak the word of God. I say God. And I love the word, and it explodes my mind into a light, just pure light. My whole body fills with this light, with this glory, with this love. As I affirm that I am that light, I am that power, I am that grace, I am that truth and eternal presence. I am the being that all is. I am the infinite, unlimited source. I say all of these words pointing to the nameless and yet the so beautifully intimate presence of my being. And as I know this to be true for me, I know that this is true for each one of us. We stand together in unison affirming that we are the glory of God. We are the eternal love of God. We are that which can never, ever die. And in this knowing, we take a moment to shoot beams of love over to Charleston, over to that beloved church, over to the awakening that is happening, where fear rides up and love prevails. This day, there are prayers and songs and united happening like never before. Love wins. Love wins today. And love wins inside of us today and every day that we allow it. Rise up, sweet love, and please sacrifice, make sacred the skinny cows that we have been clinging to. Give us the courage to set them free. Give us the courage to let go of anything and everything, stories, beliefs, attitudes, ideas, ways of being in the world, things happening in the world. Let us be courageous enough to cut loose anything and everything in the way of the glory of God. Let us awaken to a new presence, a new power, a new prosperity. Take a breath. Say yes. Say yes. Yes. Say yes. Yes. Take a breath. I am so grateful for the revelation of God. I'm so grateful for the fulfillment of this prayer, for the expanded consciousness that has just happened. We have just opened more to the grace of God. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Thank you, thank you, thank you. In great gratitude for the fulfillment of this prayer and all the gifts that it brings, I release this now, affirming that it is done. And together we say, Amen.